When food manufacturers process foods, they often alter the fatty acids in the fat or within the triglycerides through a process called hydrogenation. Hydrogenation of fats makes them resistant to oxidation, which helps improve the product's shelf life, so for food manufacturers, of course, this is desirable. Some of the unsaturated fatty acids become more saturated. What this means is the carbons accept hydrogen, meaning that a double bond becomes a single bond between the carbons within the chain, i.e. removing one or more points of unsaturation along the fatty acid. This means that the oil may become more solid and therefore harden. The resulting product is more saturated, more solid and more spreadable than the original oil. And hydrogenated oils have a higher smoking point as a consequence of the hydrogenation process. So this means that they're more suitable for frying foods at a higher temperature, again, which is a desirable property for food manufacturers, and even think about the context of fast food restaurants frying foods. Hydrogenation may affect not only the essential fatty acids within the oils, but also the fat-soluble vitamins and their actions within the body, and subsequently can result in nutrient losses. An alternative to hydrogenation for extending a product's shelf life would be to add a chemical preservative that will compete for oxygen and thus protect the oil from rancidity and act as an antioxidant, as well as just keeping the product refrigerated as well as out of direct sunlight. So those other strategies will also could be considered alternatives to hydrogenation. So how does hydrogenation result in trans fatty acids? So remember that within unsaturated fatty acids, there is at least 1 point of unsaturation in the form of a double carbon-to-carbon bond, which chemically may be considered to be slightly unstable and, in a sense, searching for something to bond to fill that, potentially open position on the carbon. Hydrogenation supplies hydrogen, and a hydrogenated fatty acid may therefore become fully saturated, removing the double carbon-to-carbon bond. But hydrogenation may also yield trans fatty acids. In this case, the trans fatty acid actually keeps the double carbon-to-carbon bond, but instead changes in shape by twisting, and that's what's highlighted in the diagram here. So this carbon-to-carbon double bond remains in place. So this is the original fatty acid with 1 point of unsaturation, causing a slightly less rigid, less straight structure, more fluid. Therefore, this would be an oil. So hydrogenation can obviously, on the one hand, result in a fully saturated fatty acid, or on the other hand, the carbon-to-carbon double bond remains in situ, but the position of the hydrogens have actually changed, meaning that this bent line twists back into a straight aligned shape, as illustrated here. So as I said, the resulting shape and structure now mimics that of a saturated fatty acid. So this is very much mimicking this, despite the presence of the double carbon-to-carbon bond. And it's longer and straighter and thus more rigid. Okay. So now we understand how trans fatty acids arise within the processed foods via the process of hydrogenation. But how does this change in structure and shape actually affect health? Well, consuming manufactured trans fats poses a risk to the heart and arteries by things like raising blood LDL cholesterol and in turn increasing our risk of cardiovascular disease, and it can also increase tissue inflammation. Some animal foods, such as milk and lean beef, do naturally contain trans fats, naturally occurring trans fats, but these trans fats have been shown to have little effect on our blood lipids themselves and are essentially disregarded. Food manufacturers have responded to the knowledge that trans fats are very undesirable for health by reducing or removing them from products, which is at surface level a good thing. However, often trans fats are then just replaced by saturated fats and or added sugars within the processed food. So these products may be no less harmful to health overall. Fat is essential within the diet to ensure we are supplied with the essential fatty acids and fat-soluble vitamins as well as adequate calories, as we all very well know by now at this point in the lecture series. Just a few teaspoons of raw oil per day and 2 servings of seafood, ideally 1 to be oily fish, per week is sufficient to meet our requirements for fat in the diet. But of course, most people are consuming much more than this minimum amount. Remember that raw oils encompass the oils we are cooking with, or contained within things like mayonnaise or oil-based dressings, but also oils within nuts, seeds, olives and avocados, and of course oily fish, as mentioned before. Remember that the type of fat we consume is very important, not just the amount of fat. Therefore, it's better to replace solid or saturated fats with liquid unsaturated fats, i.e. raw oils, in order to avoid an increase in calorie consumption. A lot of dietary fat can be hidden within manufactured foods, such as fats found within candy, chips, cookies, etc. Oh, sorry, I've moved on too quickly. The fats found in these foods are what we call added fats. There are arguably hidden fats within natural foods such as cheese, and much meat fat within processed meat products such as hamburgers and hot dogs are also hidden from view. So these can be described as invisible fats. Focusing now on fats within protein foods. So the guidelines advise us that on average we should consume between 5 and 7 ounces of protein foods per day, but also to consider the fat contained within these foods carefully. We're guided to choose lower fat varieties favouring lean poultry, especially breast meat, over red meat, taking care to check an ingredients list for any sources of added fats for more processed options. We should choose reduced fat dairy and dairy alternative products, i.e. 2% or lower total fat content, to limit calories from fat and saturated fat. And things like sour cream, cream cheese, whipping or pouring cream and butter are actually considered solid fats and do not fall within the dairy and dairy product category, and are not considered key dietary sources of calcium. Furthermore, of course, grains when in their natural state are low in fat, but fats may be added during manufacturing, processing or cooking.